Hello and welcome back to Bell Financial Group's From the Helm series. I'm Grady Wolfe, Senior Market Analyst with Bell Financial Group. Clarity Pharmaceuticals ASX CU6 is a familiar name in the healthcare industry to many investors, reaching new heights in its mission for developing radiopharmaceuticals for cancer diagnostics and treatment. I'm excited to be joined by Clarity Chairman Dr. Alan Taylor again today to discuss the company's most recent updates and outlook as we head into FY26. Alan, thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thanks, Grady. Great to be here.
Now, we must start with the recent capital raise of a mega $203 million via institutional placement to fund clinical trial programs, obviously done with our Bell's team here. What was the strategy behind this raise, as it isn't a conventional raise that we normally see on the market, given it was at a premium to the closing share price of Clarity the day before?
Excellent question. Obviously, one that I've been dealing with for the last week since we completed. It was an interesting period of time. So people, I think, were expecting us to progress our normal clinical trial development. Co-PSMA is looking to read out in the next couple of months, and then usually people follow that path, release some data, and then announce that to market, and then do a capital raise. The issue that we have, and particularly what we've seen in the last 8 months of people applying this market. You know, we've had obviously a lot of the stuff going on in the US. That's had a detrimental effect on our share price, and it's been a little bit of a yo-yo going on. And what we found was that people know what's going to happen. And so the funds then typically even sell into that data, know a capital raise is coming, and want to do it then at a substantial discount to the last close. What we found now, and it goes to our execution team. Like the last capital raise we did in 3 days. This one we did in 1 day, and was really about what was going on in relation to the ASX and our share price and the number of shorts that were around, where we're positioned in the ASX 200, and a lot of the players who play short were betting on us doing a couple of things. One is a capital raise at a discount. The other one was us leaving the ASX 200. And so if there's that negative feel and no one knowing what our company's about and not doing a dive on, you know, the opportunity even in PSMA imaging, they would start to go, okay, well, we can play a capital markets play here. So what we did was, and that sort of, you know, really taking in that information, was going, okay, well, the ASX 200 hasn't been dictated yet as whether we're in or out. Obviously, having a larger capitalization helps us significantly. Having that larger free float helps us as well. And now, because there's a lot of people who followed our story really, really closely, in particularly, you know, our shareholders and a lot of the institutional investors in our company, and it started to build out an opportunity for us to go, well, maybe now's the time. And there was a lot of excitement about that. A lot of people have been waiting for a capital raise and were ready to jump in. And then suddenly we had this opportunity to execute. It was bringing the team together. You know, there was only a very small number of people who knew about the deal, you know, myself and a couple of others within Clarity. The Bell's team was very small. It was only, you know, a small number of corporate team, our legal team. And then we opened up Friday morning. We had enough money almost from the first meeting to, you know, close the round. But we built that out, finished off the day, and it was a great outcome. And really excited for, you know, Australian biotech. The opportunity was there. I think it's a little bit of a unique play, and it related to a number of key factors. But, you know, hopefully there's a bit of excitement within our biotech community around something like this.
Now, can you please update our audience and obviously the market on what you've been up to over the last 6 months since we last caught up at the Bell Potter Healthcare Conference earlier this year?
Yeah, the last 6 months. Well, it's been a crazy time. You know, Grady, when we think about what's going on in the US, we've had some issues, obviously, and concerns in biotech, I think broadly, when, you know, we have a new person heading up the FDA, some of the stuff that's being, you know, implemented by President Trump. And I don't know, I don't think it matters which side of politics you're on, right or left. Some of the things that are coming out are a little bit scary. And the whole market's about to deal with that. But we've had there was a drop, then there was a regather, and now we've got a little bit of momentum. But then, you know, closing out on, you know, issues now. Tariffs have come back in, so markets are fluctuating. And we've had to deal a lot with that at Clarity, you know, because we're such a hot stock for the last a year or so, a little bit longer than that. And then suddenly all this change means the ups and downs are quite significant. What we did was just, this market is crazy. We have lots of money in the bank. Let's stick to our knitting. Let's do what we do best. Let's run out our clinical trials. Let's deliver data to the markets. And we had the opportunity, secure data coming out, which looked fabulous. We had even Sartate and Bombesin read out, and they look great, and moving Sartate quickly into phase 3 is our goal. But all the excitement's over PSMA. We've spent a lot of time building that molecule, 5-6 years ago. We knew how good we're going to be. Everything from, cells, preclinical work, and now the clinic. We've run 2 phase 2 trials, pre-prostatectomy and then BCR. We read out the COBRA data, which was just amazing, where we're picking up lesions that aren't even picked up by standard care imaging, even north of 6 months later. And it's incredible. And then to have the opportunity then to go just head-to-head in the co-PSMA trial, that recruited very quickly because we weren't running any trials in Australia with copper-64 at that time. We ramped up manufacturing again, and really it really gathered some momentum, and people coming in from everywhere trying to get access to that trial. And then on top of that, running the Clarify trial, which has been recruiting, and pre-prostatectomy, which is our phase 3 pivotal trial in that patient population. But then really to kick off Amplify as well. Amplify, the key issues for us with Amplify are simple. We only got 220 patients in that trial, and single sites are looking for 80 patients just to go straight onto that because of the calling in this space. I think, once again, similar to the capital raising and the unique situation that, and obviously people know how strong our assets are, but the capital raising represented a moment in time. I don't think we're ever going to see this opportunity again, ever in anything. When you look at the PSMA imaging market, it was a step up on what was previous standard of care, which was bone scan. And then one product came in, which wasn't as good, and then the PSMA imaging agents really took that market. But it was because it started from a low base. The PSMA agents at the moment are great compared to that low base where you've got high specificity, but they fail sensitivity. And I would never have thought that really even the hard work that we delivered 5-6 years ago, I'm building firstly the similar product to these standard of care imaging agents, and realizing ours was just as bad as everyone else's. And then going back to the market, the benchtop, and building a new molecule. And now where we see ourselves, we're going into this diagnostic market is a blockbuster market. That is north of $1 billion US in revenue a year for a single asset, right? Single asset area. And it's now up to the 2 billion. Estimation, and this is done with products that fail sensitivity, it's estimated that this will look to grow around about the $5 billion US sort of revenue size over the next couple of years, particularly when we bring in a molecule which overcomes a lot of the logistics issues, so that not 1 hour or 2 hour half-life isotopes, but a 12-hour half-life isotope, but then also overcoming this sensitivity issue, which allows us to pick up much smaller lesions, particularly in that biochemical recurrence. So I think it's amazing. I think, we're very fortunate, lucky to be, somewhat here, but we've got an incredible team now that's running through brick walls and looking to really deliver what is an amazing product to the market.
Now, you have made significant progress in clinical trials with Clarify, Amplify, co-PSMA. Can you tell us about what's going on with all of these, the different results you're seeing come through for each trial in terms of what you're seeing, patient recovery numbers, safety, efficacy, all of that?
Fortunately, these products, whether it's the standard of care, PSMA imaging agents or ours, the safety profiles are great, are terrific, because they're really low dose radiation and really looking to just pick up image lesions. Now, the real play here, and we've seen it now not only in our trials, so COBRA, and obviously we're running the phase 3 clinical trials, but co-PSMA was set up for a particular reason. It was really in lower PSA patients, and where we're looking about the 0.2 to 0.75 as a measure, which is after they've had their definitive therapy, and then things start to slowly increase. Now, this is the most educated prostate cancer market of all, because people have already had prostate cancer. And so then they get monitored every 6 months. As soon as it starts to go up, men start to freak out, men and their families. So, and these imaging agents, and it was really good. Oliver Sartor, who's a world-leading KOL in the space, detailed some great data recently to the Australian market too. It was a couple of weeks ago. And the telling part of this is there's about 1 million men walking around with biochemical recurrence. So their PSA is starting to go up. And around about 600,000 of those men currently can't be imaged with the current standard of care. So these current PSMA agents. And when you think about this, every lesion, every cancer in this patient population starts small before it gets larger. Now, I know that sounds incredibly logical and reasonable, but this is really the entire market that we're looking at grabbing, because all of these patients require earlier treatment. Now, what we've seen through not only our data to date, but also providing this product under special access or expanded access in the US, patients are coming to us wanting to fly from the US, actually, and go to St. Vincent's Hospital in Louisiana because they're freaking out about it and they're seeing the difference. And the reason why they want to do that is this. The current treatment regime for biochemical recurrence, when it starts coming back, is actually, if you can't see the lesion, you use radiation therapy, external beam radiation on the entire pelvic region, salvage therapy. And you can imagine the side effects are quite significant if you're irradiating such a large space. The treatment option then is equivalent to chemical castration. So it blocks, the first treatment is to block testosterone in the man, because testosterone is the fuel to the fire of prostate cancer. So those two things are not very good, as you can imagine. So what we've seen is, even today, whether it's under expanded access or in our earlier trials, is that what we're able to do is pick up lesions. Where these other standard of care imaging fails, pick up these lesions when they're small, and then use very highly targeted external beam radiation to treat, to nip it in the bud, and potentially look at curative outcomes in these patients. This is why co-PSMA was set up. It was set up in patients with that low PSA. Let's find their lesions, use external beam radiation, and then you're adding quality to life to these patients because they haven't had the whole area irradiated and they're not taking these drugs so early. And then they obviously, that's a significant benefit to them. But importantly, see if we can achieve curative outcomes. Now, that would be amazing.
Now, on co-PSMA and patients with low PSA levels, how are the Clarity diagnostic tools able to change the game and the way in which these patients are treated, as it is such an unmet market right now?
It is. And it's, as I said, it's massive. So we are really here to go into that broader market. So immediately there's 600,000 men in the US today who need a better diagnostic. We don't have any competition in that space. And you've got to think, these products are around about, say they're $5,000 a dose. That ends up to be a fair revenue opportunity for us in the next couple of years. But there's a few things we're looking at doing. Clearly, the co-PSMA trial is specifically in that space to read out the next couple of months. And as I said before, it recruited very quickly because of that high unmet need of patients really looking to find their lesions. And that will also have a separate part. So yes, the last patient's done, and all that readout statistics is all being prepared. But importantly, we're looking at the effect of finding that lesion so much earlier on patient outcomes when it comes to clinical care. When that starts to read out, the broader opportunity is this: 600,000 men just in the US, a whole bunch of men in Australia. A lot of them have, some of them have already been in touch with us because the drive is so significant to find their lesions so much earlier. And as I mentioned to you, and this is such a true statement, the amount of men who want to fly to Australia. Obviously, we're running our clinical trials in the US. Clarify and Amplify are there available for Americans today. and they're also available to Australians. And so those trials are looking to get done very quickly and efficiently. But the key difference here is we don't see any competitors in our space, even some other products looking to develop. None of them have that basic ability. The first one is an optimized targeting moiety where we're increasing the amount of product getting into the lesions at an early time point. But importantly, that next day imaging just gives us the opportunity to find these much smaller lesions in these patients. If we can bring at least some, longer extended happiness to these patients where they don't have to go on these drugs early, they actually get that extended runway. We might even nip it in the bud for them so that maybe their cancer's cured at that time, then that is a massive change to current standard of care.
Now, what have urologists been saying about this unmet need and what 64 CU6 PSMA, that's your drug candidate, I'm assuming, what that is able to do for this diagnostic tool, given it's the only one they have access to right now?
So the current market there's 3 current agents. One of them is called Pylarify. One of them is called, it's gallium PSMA 11. It's been commercialized by a number of different groups. The most popular in Australia is probably the Illuccix kit, which is commercialized by Telix, but it's been commercialized by Novartis and a few others because it's a product that doesn't have a patent position. And then there's Posluma, which is the third player to that market, which is a fluorinated product very similar to Pylarify. What we have seen, because there's been a lot of discussion in the marketplace about, these products. Yes, everyone knows they fail sensitivity. Yes, everyone knows we have a better product. And there's been conversations around, well, we've got these now very expensive, very sensitive cameras, and that can overcome the issues of, potentially of these agents. That's not our experience. And if you speak to people like Professor Louise Emmett and others who now have the experience, and in particular in the US, with measuring even on these very sensitive cameras, utilizing Pylarify or gallium PSMA 11, there isn't necessarily a big, massive difference to overcome that massive sensitivity issue. And what we've found is even patients, because they're the most eager to get imaged with our agents, flying even to get imaged on these highly sensitive cameras, are still failing because there's a lot of things at play. It's not just the molecule. It's not just obviously the single targeting moiety versus the double, but there's a few other things like physiology. You're infusing these agents. It takes a little while to get there. And these other agents suffer from the low half-life, the short half-life. So what we call those agents is isotope-centric medicine. Okay? You're imaging at 1 hour because it has a very short half-life. For us, what we're really focusing on now is patient-centric medicine. Image the patient at the time when you can find their lesions. And so you can use our product at 1 hour, and yes, we have 2 to 3 times the amount of uptake into the lesions, but you can image with next-day imaging. And there was a little bit of sort of issues around that, it's such an inconvenience. And I'll share with you an oncologist's view. He said to me, and this was related to the pre-prostatectomy market, okay, specifically. He said, what's inconvenient is having your prostate ripped out 3 weeks later and being impotent and incontinent after that, and then still having cancer. That's a massive inconvenience. Whereas if we're looking at the much higher sensitivity with that next day imaging, people are very willing to come back. And so this is now, that's the first point. People don't have, when you're trying to find cancer, the goal of a cancer diagnostic is to find the cancer, not to have a 1 hour image. First goal. Okay, it's very logical and reasonable, but this is what the market, the conversations in the market are, Grady. It's crazy, right? The first goal. The second part is there is a real camera timing issue. And so to have agents come in, like, because you're looking at, you get your agent with a 1 hour half-life, so you've got to image at 1 hour, so you have the dose, and then you got all these scrambling during the day. Our product is a very different game. Once it's injected, you can image at 1 hour, 4 hour, 6 hour, next day, or even the day after. It doesn't matter. It gets better as it gets longer. Obviously, the next day imaging is far better. And when I say far better, it's 5 times better when we're looking at, that tumor to background ratio or the contrast. So now people are going, wow, not only can we have a more sensitive agent, but we might be able to plan patients much better because, the product can come in. We don't have to inject it straight away because it has a shelf life of 48 hours. We can inject at any time. We can have them then, if they're coming back the next day, we can plan that better. We don't have to worry about an injection beforehand. And so it frees up potentially all of these logistical issues so that people just come in, get scanned, head home, and suddenly they have better imaging of their cancer, which is critical, better treatment, which is critical because then it actually reduces the load on the obviously the medical infrastructure. And then it just has this, the camera use can be much more efficient in making sure that that's not a shortfall. When we build into that centralized manufacture, because we have a shelf life, broad distribution to wherever there's a PET camera, suddenly you're not just in, LA and New York in the US or Sydney and Melbourne, you can provide it to anywhere where there's a PET camera. There's myriad opportunities and it's crazy. It's, as I said to you, I don't think we'll ever see an opportunity like this in biotech, in diagnostics, where it's a blockbuster market for products that fail sensitivity.
And finally, for investors looking at financial stability as a key metric investors look for when looking to invest in different companies, what does the timeline to free cash flow generation look like for Clarity, and when do you expect first revenue?
It's a really good question, Grady, and it relates to how the FDA, obviously there's a regulatory component to commercializing any assets. Recruitment is fantastic. We're looking to close recruitment, the BCR trial, Amplifier, close recruitment this year. Actually, that one, it's quite interesting. We're trying to make sure that we get high quality data on that one. So we're taking that one slowly. You'll never hear a biotech say that because there's so many people who are looking to get access to this product. That's not the issue. We've got to make sure we have high quality data to report. The Clarify trial is recruiting. That one's a bigger trial, so it's 380 odd patients, and so that one's working through the paces. We're saying conservatively looking to get that completed the start of next year. Then what we do is get all of that information together. There's a follow-up period on the BCR trial, and we get all of that data ready for the FDA. There's a couple of other things which are going on with the FDA. They've implemented a new breakthrough status, which everyone knows. We've got 3 fast-track designations on this one molecule, an extraordinary feat in itself. And you can imagine with that interaction with the FDA, firstly, we can actually submit modules as we complete them with the FDA and have them reviewed in due course. And then, but with the breakthrough status, it allows a much more efficient process of getting to market. You can imagine we would apply for something like that and see how that pans out. So those sorts of questions are still up in the air. Will we get breakthrough status? Will it work out? What's the process then? And how does the FDA look? Because nobody's actually utilized one of these new breakthrough opportunities because they've only just come in, the last couple of months. I know there's a couple of companies working through that now, and we'll see how that plays out. But you can imagine we would be, given the difference in our product compared to standard of care, we would go for something of that. So we're looking to finish off all the clinical trials, everything next year. We gather all that information, and whether we can then have breakthrough status just on BCR because of the high unmet need, that allows us to get into the market a lot faster. But conservatively speaking, we're looking at the next couple of years. We now have $270 million in the bank, really to progress all of our trials. I know we focused on diagnostics now. We have our therapy trial, which is really exciting. The data was incredible. 12 out of 13 patients responding with strong PSA drops. Most of those off single doses was incredible data. So now we're doing that rollout. And to really push SARTATE too. Is SARTATE going to be maybe with a smaller trial, can we get that to market faster? We'll see how that pans out. Will we look for breakthrough status, given the incredible data compared to standard of care? Why not? And so really, we're in a strong financial position. The next couple of years are going to be really important to get that product to market quickly and efficiently. And now, because a lot of people have heard me say in the past, I said to a joke, if you get to market with a product, you failed because, you didn't have anything. The way we see this now, if this is just, really the restrictions on the market, the PSMA market is supply a lot of the time. It's $2 billion US today, as I said, on products that fail sensitivity and that have 1 and 2 hour half-lives. If we're looking really to be in that market and to see it as a 5, even up to a $10 billion US market, if we're getting to very early in the treatment paradigm and look at things like external beam radiation, this is really pre-prostatectomy, and even look to avoid prostatectomy. That is a massive market opportunity. Why wouldn't we want to have a little look at that?
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of From the Helm with Clarity Pharmaceuticals. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all market insights, commentary, and of course, exclusive interviews like this one.